Welcome to Deck Analysis and Testing. Today we're looking at Blue Eyes. Yes, Blue Eyes, a fan favorite archetype that just won't stop getting new support. Not that I'm complaining, because this time the new stuff actually doesn't look all that bad. Following the footsteps of Duel Neos, both Dark Magician and Blue Eyes have access to a new skill that basically allows him to normal summon a big vanilla and set free pass. While that just sounds like Constellas without the quick monster effects, this deck makes up for it by having bigger monsters and access to one of the best, if not the best, counter trap in the entire game. Let's have a look at the individual cards. First is 3 copies of Blue Eyes White Dragon. This card needs no introduction, it's just a big guy that we can normal summon because of our skill. Next is 3 copies of Dragon Spirit of White. Yes, you can get all 3 copies without needing to spend a single dollar, because you can get 2 from one of the structure decks in the White Dragon of Legend, and you can get the third one in Blue Eyes Evolution. This card, when normal or special summoned, can banish a back row your opponent controls, and you will be able to normal summon this card, so it's a really good choice for you to normal summon. And also, it counts as a normal monster in your hand, so the skill allows you to normal summon it, but it counts as an effect monster on the field, so you can use it as a tribute for Successor Soul. It also has a quick effect to tribute itself to special summon one Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand, which allows you to dodge your opponent's disruptions and get in for more damage if your opponent has monsters on field, because you can attack once with your Dragon Spirit of White and then tribute it to summon your Blue Eyes in your hand and then attack again. And finally, we have 2 copies of Alternative White Dragon. Yes, we don't need 3 copies, even though we have access to 3. Actually, we have access to 4, but we actually don't need that many Alternative White Dragons, because first of all, you can't actually normal summon this card. So if you have this card in your hand and no regular Blue Eyes, you can't actually summon this card. So it might be a brick sometimes. And second of all, it's searchable with your Melody of Awakening Dragon, so you don't really need that many copies. Anyway, this card can be special summoned by revealing a normal Blue Eyes from your hand, and also once per turn, you can destroy one monster your opponent controls, but this card cannot attack during that turn. This card also is treated as the regular Blue Eyes when on the field or in the graveyard, so you can use it as a material for your Blue Eyes fusion monsters. Okay, now let's talk about the spells and traps. First is 1 copy of Successor Soul. This card is searchable, so you don't really need more copies. If you have 2, maybe you could play 2. I just like playing 1, because realistically you probably won't need that many. You're probably already winning if you already grab both Successor Soul and Ultimate Fusion. So I think personally 1 copy is fine. This card can tribute 1 effect monster and then target 1 effect monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard, and then special summon 1 level 7 or higher normal monster from your hand or deck. You can only use this card once per turn, and also you can only attack with 1 monster during the turn you activate this card, which will not matter if you use it during your opponent's turn, which will usually be the case. This card can allow you to tribute 1 effect monster, but the problem is if you normal summon Blue Eyes, which is required for you to use the skill to search Successor Soul, Blue Eyes is not an effect monster, but we have a solution for this, and that is our Link monster. We have 1 copy of the Link 1, which is Imduk. This card basically turns our non-effect monsters into effect monsters. So what you can do is normal summon Blue Eyes, and then that activates the skill, which grabs you Successor Soul, and then you link away your Blue Eyes to make Imduk, and then you set your Successor Soul on end turn, and during your opponent's turn, when they summon a monster, you can flip up your Successor Soul, tribute your Link 1, get rid of your opponent's monster, and then summon another Blue Eyes from your deck that way. Next is our second target for our skill, Ultimate Fusion. This card allows you to fusion summon using monsters from your hand, field, or graveyard, and fusion summon Blue Eyes monster using Blue Eyes White Dragon or Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon as material, and then you can destroy face-up cards your opponent controls up to the number of regular Blue Eyes that you used from your field as a material. And also, I guess, Ultimate Dragon, but that doesn't really mean anything because you probably won't have Ultimate Dragon on field. But anyway, what this does is basically it's another disruption. Not only does it allow you to make your fusion monsters, which is good on its own, it also allows you to pop cards because of how easy it is to actually have Blue Eyes on field. It's basically one monster pop at minimum, and sometimes it's even a treacherous trap hole because if you have both alternative and the regular Blue Eyes, the alternative is treated as the regular Blue Eyes on field, so you can pop 2 cards. You can pop 2 face-up cards over control. And that's really good. That's basically a treacherous. And that also gives you a nice fusion monster as a bonus, which the fusion monsters themselves are pretty good. So it's a nice card in general. And for our final spell, it's 3 copies of Melody of the Awakening Dragon. This card is just really good, and it gives you access to both the Blue Eyes and the alternative, which you can summon both during the same turn. And when you have both on field, that makes Ultimate Fusion a lot better because it becomes a double pop instead of a single pop. So yeah, for our traps, we're playing the usual 3 copies of Horror House, 3 copies of Cloak and Dagger, and we have the best counter trap, probably, in the entire game. Champion's Vigilance can negate an opponent's summon. So what that does is that actually it prevents your opponent from activating anything that's on summon, and that actually doesn't mean that the monster is on the field when you activate this card. The monster that's summoned counts as not being on the field because it's haven't been summoned successfully yet, so it counts as not on the field for some reason. But that actually gets around a lot of effects, especially those that activate when a monster leaves the field, or other effects that only trigger when your opponent successfully summons a monster, or when they have to activate a quick effect that requires them to have a monster on field. For example, you can actually negate the summon of Tachyon Dragon and prevent them from using the counter trap, because the counter trap needs Tachyon Dragon to be on the field, and you can actually negate the summon before it hits the field because that's how negating summons work. So that actually prevents them from using the counter trap entirely. And that's pretty good. So the requirement is for you to have a level 7 or higher normal monster, which is comically easy for this deck. You just normal summon the Blue Eyes and that's it. And it not only negates a summon, it also negates a spell or trap as well if you choose to do so. So this card is really versatile, it's really strong, and no wonder it is limited to 1. It's also really easy to obtain. For the extra deck, we're playing... first of all, let's explain why we're playing a copy of Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon, because this card can be sent using your skill. Your skill can send normal monsters from your deck or extra deck to your graveyard, so Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon is one of the targets that you can send. Another one is Lanforinkus. This card is a Link monster that doesn't have an effect, which also meets the skill requirement. You can send this card as part of the requirement, and then the second one can be Link summoned just normally, and then make Draco Masters. Draco Masters, by the way, is really good in this deck because of the amount of normal monsters you will have in your graveyard. So if you're able to make this card, it's usually a board wipe for your opponent. It usually destroys every monster your opponent controls, which is really good. And we explained Imdak already in the Successor Soul part. And then we are also playing Twin Burst and Neo Ultimate Dragon as the ultimate fusion targets that you can make using 2 or 3 Blue Eyes that you have as material. Okay, so let's have a look at the skill. The skill is Battle Chronicle. This skill works for both Blue Eyes and Dark Magician as well. During this duel, you can basically normal summon normal monster with 2500 attack or defense for free, or Chronicle Magician if you play that card. And also you can only special summon or summon Spellcaster, Light Dark monsters, Dragon-type Light monsters, and Effect monsters without a level. It's mistranslated again, like every single skill that came along with the new box. And also, during the turn, you normal summon a Chronicle Sorceress or a level 7 or above monster. You can basically add a Successor Soul or a quick play spell that mentions Dark Magician or Blue Eyes White Dragon. from your deck to your hand, and then you forced to send a non-effective monster from your deck or extra deck to your graveyard, otherwise you can't activate this skill. That's why we have to play multiple copies of non-effect monsters, because every time you use the skill to grab a card from your deck to your hand, you need to send one non-effect monster somewhere. And thankfully we can send from the extra deck. That means we don't have to waste slots in our main deck to send. Taking a look at the expensive version, I choose to build a similar version to the free-to-play version, in that we are just playing a bunch of huge guys without playing the synchros or Xyz, and then playing a lot of back row, because that's like probably the best way to play this deck, to be honest. So we're basically playing the same monster ratios along with the same amount of copies of Melody of Awakening Dragon, and one Ultimate Fusion and one Successor Soul, but instead of the free-to-play stable traps, we're just playing 3 copies of Book of Moon and 3 copies of Compulse. For the extra deck, it's basically the same, with just better Link monsters, so just not much to talk about. But these stable traps actually do make a huge difference, because if you're playing a back row heavy version, the back row that you actually choose to play is a really big impact to how good the deck is. So let's have a look at how this deck plays. In our first game, we are going first, which is wonderful, because our deck is made for going first. Look at the amount of back row we're playing. If we open well, we are usually able to set free and pass every single turn. We opened with an okay hand. I mean, we got one extra monster that we can actually summon during our first turn, but that's okay, we can just summon it during our next turn. We can still at least summon both of our blue eyes, one alternative and one normal one, and because we already have a Successor Soul, we can grab the fusion instead, and then we can set 2 and pass. That's basically 2 disruptions. One of them is even a double pop because we have 2 blue eyes on field. Our opponent is playing a stall deck, so let's see how well we deal with our opponent's back row. First, we can activate Ultimate Fusion using both of our monsters as material from our field, and one from our graveyard to actually make Neo Ultimate Dragon and pop 2 of our opponent's face-up cards, including one of their face-up spells and traps, because this card can pop face-up spells and traps as well. Our opponent will activate Light Imprisoning Mirror in response to our Dragon Spirit of White to prevent us from banishing it. That's fine, at least we can still attack with it. Our opponent is going to Fiendish Chain our fusion, so we can't attack with it. And then activate Necro Valley, which actually doesn't do that much in this version of the deck, because we don't actually use the tuners and stuff like Whitestone, so it's fine. Our opponent activates a second Fiendish Chain, and now they have officially ran out of back row zones, and we can just summon a guy, and he has nothing to actually stop us. Okay, in our second game, let's see what we can do. We are once again going first. Wonderful. Our opponent is playing Mizar, and we opened with 2 back row. And because we can grab another back row with our skill, that is set free pass, which is the best that this deck can do. And what's even better is that we opened with a Melody as well, which means we can grab both alternative and the regular blue eyes. So on top of having 3 set back row, we also have 2 monsters on field. And also, having alternative on field also means that we don't have to make the Link 1, which has a really low attack. So instead we can just tribute the alternative to use our Successor Soul. And this is what I have been talking about in the deck profile, is that when our opponent makes Tachyon, we can actually negate it with our counter trap, and that prevents them from using the counter trap themselves to negate our counter trap, because it's technically not on the field yet. So later I find out that my opponent is only playing a single copy of Tachyon Dragon, so they can't make a second copy. And even if they do, we still have 2 back row to actually contest it, so it's not that big of a deal. But it's funny how they have actually run out of targets to use the counter trap with. So we can just simply flip that Cypher Dragon face down, and they are forced to set 2 and pass. We will get rid of that final monster before we go to battle next turn, so we can attack with both of our monsters instead of only just one. We draw another trap, we can actually just, it's not a trap, it's a bluff, but we can just set it, bluff our opponent. Our opponent only has 1 monster in hand, probably not even a monster, but yeah, they will scoop. Okay, in our third and final game, let's see what we can do. Going first again, amazing. Let's activate our skill, and then there we go, that's 2 traps, and we will grab the third one using our skill. And let's see what we can do. Well, we don't open with a melody. We usually just activate our skill and then make our link 1 because our successor soul requires us to have an effect monster, and the link 1 qualifies as that. We can set free and hope for the best. Our opponent activates Fire King Island, and this actually showcases one of the weaknesses of this deck because this is, spoiler alert, a loss. And one of the weaknesses of this deck is that it's not actually that good in the grind game because of how the deck works. This deck actually doesn't have a lot of graveyard effects. It has actually none, in fact. It's the only sort of follow-up you have is Ultimate Fusion, which allows you to use stuff from your graveyard. But other than that, this deck actually doesn't have a lot of graveyard effects, which is nice if your opponent is playing graveyard counters like Necro Valley or DD Crow. This deck is basically unaffected by those, but what makes this deck vulnerable is to play in the grind game when the graveyard effects actually matter. In our case of our opponent is playing a ton of graveyard effects. They're playing Fire King, which means every single time they pop their own monsters, they basically come back every single turn. And having both a monster wipe and a spell and trap wipe is really frustrating. So as you can see, our opponent is able to get rid of everything. And even though we can activate Ultimate Fusion, as I said, to use stuff from our graveyard to at least beat over both of our opponent's monsters, we're still a bit off from lethal, and that is all our opponent needs to actually win the game. Our opponent will summon back the Neffis. Even though we can cloak that, it doesn't really matter because they still have access to 2 level 4s plus the Garunics in the graveyard, which they can very easily access just by using the Fire King Island to pop their own Avatar, which lets them summon back the Garunics, and that allows him to pop our Fusion Monster. And Alternative White Dragon is also showing another weakness of this deck, is that Alternative White Dragon specifically doesn't really do anything on its own. So if you draw this card without anything else, it just breaks in your hand. Our opponent doesn't even need to wait another turn. They can just make Malevolent Sin and banish our Fusion and just attack full game. So yeah,